Welcome to the Leadership Lab. Today we're going to be discussing an important topic, which is the truth about inconsistent revenue and cash flow stress with Virginia. Hi, Virginia.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing good. A serious subject.
Well, it's definitely one of the pain points that leaders, as they're running especially entrepreneurs, when they're running their organization, may run into. And we are talking about reframing the problem, which is a great way to be able to start changing the way you're looking at it, searching for solutions. So if you analyze what the problem is, you're able to move then to the solution.
So what do you think is the real reason? Why do so many entrepreneurs miss it?
I think it's really a challenge whenever you do not forecast, you do not look at the longevity of your business, you do not think about what is coming next. You get into uncertainty because you're not seeing what's coming.
I think that's why you talk about reframing and how important it is to reframe our perspective. So let's talk about reframe. What new perspectives do leaders need to adopt to stabilize their cash flow?
Well, they definitely do need to transform that uncertainty and get into more informed decision making by looking at what is coming.
So we tie that into forecasting.
Yes, that is the way that you eliminate, the lack of forecasting. You move into that space of being able to, just look at what is coming and being able to establish different parameters for you to follow.
So failure to adequately forecast is where we run into trouble. Compounds the stress that we already have. So in what ways does the lack of clarity then lead to poor reactionary decision making?
Well, you're not being proactive, you have no strategy, so therefore you run into roadblocks because you're reacting all the time. You're not following a certain path that you've already thought about, that you've already researched, so therefore you have to react. All you could do is react when the problems come in.
I can't help but think you're on the road, you've got somebody in front of you and you can't see around them because they're a big truck.
Right.
So you try to look around them and see, are they going slow or is the guy in front of them going slow? So you change lanes and then all of a sudden gap gets closed in the lane you just moved out of because you couldn't see ahead.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
So the better you can see ahead, the better judgment you have as to should I make a change in the lane or should I just stay where I am?
Yes, your decisions are a lot more effective when you're able to not have to react to things that come up.
So you talk about inconsistent and a growth rhythm. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, you have no clear growth rhythm, and then your accuracy will suffer not only in your future resources that you're thinking about, different components of your business, your expenses, your cash flow. You just don't know where you're going. You're kind of walking a little blind.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I think the whole idea behind a rhythm is what's important. Having the right rhythm leads to positive growth.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. The rhythm is what establishes that journey, that effective journey that you will start walking.
You got me thinking about my sleep patterns. You got me thinking about my eating. Because it kind of fits in everywhere, and you have to understand that those things affect the bottom line as well, right?
Absolutely.
Not getting enough sleep, not eating right, and getting your life into a rhythm that is healthy is so important.
Yes.
So why does it happen?
Okay. Well, when we talk about the root causes of these challenges, so no revenue strategy, for example, is extremely detrimental for the future of your business, and it creates chaos because you're a little blind. You have not looked deep enough as far as to establish a strategy of how it is that you are going to grow revenue.
So we've got to get to the core, right?
Exactly.
So what are the core operational causes that lead to this chronic cash flow stress?
Exactly. So one of them is the no revenue strategy, not having a strategy to be effective as far as creating the right revenue strategy. You don't have it. Inconsistent focus is another one, and that destroys momentum. The lack of systems. How are you able to scale your business? How are you able to go from point A to point B to point C without a system in place? And you know about that more than I do, being a project manager, having been a project manager for so long.
Sure. And as a project manager, we're always thinking about the cost, right?
Absolutely.
And we have to address the cost factor in our projects, because the ultimate cost can often lead to overruns, right?
Absolutely.
So let's address the leadership behavior. Leadership behavior. What's the ultimate cost to the leader and to their business?
Well, it's really a destructive path. It halts growth whenever you don't take care of the things that you must take care of. As difficult as they might be, you need to be able to take care of them in a timely manner. So it could really lead to the destruction of your business.
You know, I'm sure a lot of folks are thinking, am I heading in the direction of this stress? I know I'm feeling stress is building. I know I got tax time is coming up again, and I know I've got to do my taxes, so I'm getting stressed about looking at my revenue, looking at my costs, and so forth. And there's got to be some warning signs that tell me ahead of time that I'm running into some issues. So what are some of the warning signs that people can look out for so that they can preempt problems that are going to occur?
Sure. Whenever you look at the revenue, the fluctuation, revenue fluctuates from month to month. This destabilizes your business, and it turns into a negative strategy. You see that you are implementing, by not implementing the right strategies, you're actually implementing a negative, and you're not able to see. You have spikes. You do not have stability or a growth pattern that is healthy in your business. So that's one of the warning signs whenever you see the revenue fluctuating month to month.
How do dramatic revenue fluctuations serve as a red flag for deeper structural problems within the business?
Well, whenever you don't have clear projections, because you have not, it kind of ties in with, the forecasting, being able to calculate what might happen in your business, or where is it that you want for that business to go on a consistent basis. Things like calculating average income, or how do I reduce expenses, things of that sort are the things that you work on whenever you do not have that, whenever you do not have clear projections. It's a warning sign.
So in the absence of clear projections and the lack of financial visibility certainly are warning signs that we need to be aware of. So finally, how do the leader's emotional reactions to numbers become a critical problem?
Well, that is kind of like a huge warning sign whenever, it's a crisis. You realize that you have gotten yourself into a crisis, and the stakes might be higher than what you're able to handle at the time, and there's a threat to your business. So most definitely, that is a huge warning sign whenever emotions start. You start reacting to the numbers, in a crisis mode.
We're getting back to the hidden costs, right?
Right.
So, stress, anxiety, take a mental toll, right?
Oh my gosh, it's that is one of the hidden drains on profitability, where the bottom line will suffer, and also, more importantly, even though business is very important, but your personal life, your health, and there is a high cost monetarily on your health. Whenever it may go to the next level in which you will suffer.
Sure, and it leads to poor decision making overall,
Absolutely.
right? Because you're not in a healthy place, so you can't make good decisions. You're not able to see ahead because you don't have that clarity, and all these things come together as a perfect storm.
Absolutely, errors in judgment, costly mistakes, everything you mentioned.
And it affects the organization, right?
Yes.
ultimate instability.
A lack of trust and poor communication. Everything starts breaking down, and the team gets weaker.
Sure. Sometimes the team knows before you do that there's a cash flow crisis that's about to happen, and they're waiting to hear, your check is going to be a week late,
Yes.
right? Or the electric goes out, and you get a call. Don't worry, it'll be back on in a half hour. For some reason the bill didn't get paid.
Absolutely.
Right.
Cause for worries, right?
So, in what specific ways does operating under financial pressure force leaders into short-term thinking?
Well, you start prioritizing the immediate rewards, the quick fixes, and you start putting at risk long-term stability, because basically what you're doing is you are treading water. You are reacting. You have lost your north. And this happens a lot to entrepreneurs, and it happens a lot to organizations when leadership is not performing the way that it should.
Thinking about Fortune 500 companies both work for.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
They were doing really well for a long time, and they just thought that they could then begin to coast on their past success and not having a long-term viewpoint.
Right.
Taking that short-term thinking, will always do well. Both businesses suffered to tune of billions of dollars.
Big time. And that is when you don't pay attention to the root causes. And many times when you don't, you yourself, you're not doing the projections like we talked about, you're not planning, you're not looking, but also you're not listening to the people, to your team, that sometimes they're trying to tell you, they're trying to let you know, because they could see it, from where they're at, they're able to see what is eating away at the business.
And sometimes it's just the attitude of your employees, right? You can see that they're not as committed. They're showing up right on time as opposed to showing up early. They're leaving as soon as the time chimes at 5 o'clock. They're out the door.
Yeah.
They've lost interest in the business because they don't see your interest in the business. They don't have clarity because you don't have clarity. You can't bring that clarity to your team on the projects you're working on the forecasting for your business as to where you want to be in a year from now. These kinds of things get lost, and we think that somehow they take care of themselves because no one's complaining.
Right.
But it's those silent complaints
Yes.
that you have to look for.
Yes,
Right?
yes. You must, feel the pulse of that team that you have. You must be in communication and with them, because they're your partners, even though they're not you might see they're not at your same level. I mean, you feel that they're on a lower space, and you feel that maybe they do not know as much. They do not see the whole picture, but they see a portion of the picture. So it's very important to hear them out.